Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Lynn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good day, and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Leon Tabak. I will moderate our discussion today. The title is Faster, Better, Cheaper. And the premise of our talk is that engineers have discovered better ways of responding to clients' needs. And we think that this engineering community has something to share with people in other pursuits and in other kinds of organizations. To help us explore this topic, we have three guests with us today. Keith Dahlby is at Nuboco.
Yeah.
Annie Plotz has a, how would you like to describe that? Dynamic leadership,
Yeah.
a consulting firm. And Greg Sohl is a director of software development at Stone River. Maybe you could say a little bit more about your background, and then we'll launch into our topic a little bit more. So,
right.
Nuboco, what are you doing in our community, Keith?
Nuboco. So Nuboco is the nonprofit that does lots of different things in our community related to education, entrepreneurship, and innovation. My role in particular is architecting software for startups, for local businesses, other community organizations, to solve problems related to entrepreneurship. And really just helping businesses do their work better. And then I'm also an instructor for the new Delta V Code School, right, where we are trying to teach more people how to build software.
Very good. And Annie, you spoke at a conference sponsored by one of our local engineering societies recently, and that's how your name came to my attention. Tell us a little bit about what you said at that conference. Sure. and more generally the kind of work you do here in our community.
So my focus is really on helping others, not in software business per se, but I am in people where. And so what I focus on is leadership, management issues, strategy complexities, and the people side of business. So what I appreciate in the topic that we'll be discussing is the fact that we're not just looking at material or product, but we're considering how people work within those processes and methodologies to improve cheaper, faster, better.
Right. Okay, Greg, I know mainly through the meetings he sponsors for local software engineers and a wonderful twice-a-year conference that he's been putting together for many years. So we have, I think, on this panel, not only software experience with two of you, but entrepreneurial experience with all of you, and we're going to see some relationship there. Tell us a little bit about your work in the community.
Sure. Right, Leon. We met through Iowa Code Camp, a nonprofit organization I help run. We run 2 software conferences a year that are open to the public. They're free for attendance, and we have one coming up on July 22nd. We invite all sorts of software developers to come and learn in a nice open environment. You can check us out at iowacodecamp.com. I'm also a 35-year software developer. I work for Stone River here locally. We write computer software for insurance companies.
Okay, so my premise here, our premise here, Keith, is that if we look at the largest computer programs, they rank among the most complex objects that human beings have ever designed or built. And so a big part of the challenge for us in software engineering, I should mention here as well, we haven't said, well, it wasn't on the title for the camera, I teach computer science at Cornell College and worked in industry before that. So part of the challenge is learning to master this complexity. And maybe you can start us in this discussion. A key word in this discussion is agile. Yeah. Agile is an effort to solve a problem. Maybe there's something you could say about what we're trying to do. What's the, give it just launch us there, the big idea. What's the problem we're trying to solve? And
you bet. Well, I mean, so for a very long time, things have been built by figuring out what you need to build, and then we plan how we're going to build it, and then we embark upon building it, and then we make sure that we built what we said that we were going to. So think of building a house. You come up with the blueprint, you come up with the a bill of materials, and you hire the subcontractors that'll put up the frame and then the roof, and then there's a series, an order of steps. And so for quite some time in the construction of software, folks took the same approach, that they would plan out what they think they need to build, and then they would set out to build it, and then they would verify that they built what they said they wanted to build, right. And then hope for the best. And so in the 90s, a group of very experienced software developers at that time kind of got together and started talking about the challenges that they found with approaching software in this manner. And so they came up with what they called the Agile Manifesto, which essentially described an alternative way of approaching software development, where you're not focused on planning out everything that you're going to build, that you're not focused on trying to rein in exactly what the expectations need to be, but rather trying to tease out of conversations with customers, out of the process of building the software in the first place, what exactly it is that is going to be the best solution to the problem at hand, be it software or otherwise.
So Annie, you've worked with engineering organizations and with engineers, and you're helping people, including young people, enter this culture and make themselves productive and successful. And we know that the key to that success is more than just the technical knowledge. Can you speak to some of the attitudes and expectations that you're trying to help these new entrants into the field develop so that they can succeed?
I'd love to. I think one of the most important things that we have to remember is the workplace is rapidly changing. It's difficult for us to all keep up with it, in fact, sometimes. What I've noticed in the past, if you look at old hierarchical ways of doing business, industrialized methods in the businesses that we see that are fully established today, there's generally a top-down order. So I'm going to coin some of your phrases. You'll see in the people aspect of business, it's very much like in software development. So you have a core group of leaders that hover at the top and create a strategy of achievements and goals that have to be achieved. From there, then, it begins to spin down and developed into, well, what will be the tactics and the whiches and the whats. And from there, then, it's pushed to the front line, and the front line takes orders and proceeds to move forward. That methodology doesn't work anymore today. That industrial age of leadership is broken. We can't count on that because of the speed of the workplace. So now we have to engage with a whole new set of dynamics. Millennials, younger, faster, more tech-savvy individuals who like to focus on the job. I want to get it done, and then I want to have a balance in my life. Time matters, but it isn't about time I spend in the office. It's just time is a commodity. I want it well spent. So between old paradigms of industrial age leadership and new paradigms of the knowledge worker comes in now, and it doesn't have to be the old way. The better you and I begin to stimulate conversation, exchange worlds of thought, the way that you see it, the way that I see it, the way a stakeholder may see it, we have to be able to engage in rapid fire communication, pulling and extrapolating ideas from each other, and then figuring out a way to insert those into processes that can move at the speed of work, and no longer just at the plan from the top down.
So Greg, I'm going to ask you, we're not going to give our audience an engineering seminar here, but we want to give them some of the lingo and some of the principal features of the methods we use in developing software. So talk a little bit about the size of teams, the frequency of due dates and milestones, how you organize yourself in this agile method, and how that might contrast with an older style where a couple of experts go into a closed room, come out with a detailed master plan, and we all follow it for the next 3 years.
Well, sure. To do that, I'm going to take just a half a step back and lean into a little bit to what Keith was talking about with the old ways and the reasons why. And the reasons being because we learned from failure, extreme failure in many cases, and so many smaller failures that you don't hear about in the news. But the large failures you saw in the news, from the IRS's failures, FBI's failures, the state of California with their DMV replacement, systems replacement. Huge dollars, huge public black eyes, right? Those were all using the old school methodologies that Keith described just moments ago. As we look towards agile methodologies, we look towards building software in small chunks. We look towards having teams that are small, 5 to 10, 2 to 20, varies across the industry, and often very self-organized. Not just in the execution at the end, like you described, but self-organized from a standpoint of how the work is approached from the beginning and engaged in more aspects of the design aspect of the software from the beginning. Agile says build software in small chunks and deliver it frequently. Frequently varies depending on the different aspects of the software you're working on. We deliver software every 2 weeks to our customers, and I'm building products for sale, so my customers are my business team and my testing teams. They get my software. Eventually, I have customers that buy our software. That's a good thing, and those are the people that eventually see it. But from an agile development standpoint, we deliver small, workable chunks of software that can be tested on a regular basis, and this is where a huge key of agile comes in, allows us to fail early, to figure out very, very early in the process when something isn't right. Why is that a good thing? Because all of those years of failure in the past taught us that we don't know everything at the beginning. Right. We learn, evolve, and grow through the processes of building things. And those early review points, those frequent review points, expose those changes, those problems on a very early basis when they're cheap to change, when they're cheap to fix, right. Not just at the end when you have a large-scale failure on your hands.
So how might this apply to somebody who's developing a seminar or a workshop or the other kinds of services or products that you deliver?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple of things I want to build on. First, while Agile is definitely a benefit, and when you hear it, discuss it, study it, I think almost anybody who does any research on it at all will say Agile is a great approach. It's a way to tap into innovation, to learn from mistakes, to fail fast and fail forward. You know, every step, every prototype that didn't work, the next one may be the one that is auto-magically, you know, opens the door of creativity and the success we're all looking for. When you're working with people, preparing for seminars, presentations, all of us have angst when it comes to the people side of business. I don't want to fail in front of a boss. I want to succeed. I'm the new kid right out of college on a team of very established professionals. And I think it's very difficult for people who are coming into the workplace, regardless of whether it's public speaking, whether it's working with professionals in an established workplace today. The atmosphere and culture for employees coming into a workplace today needs to be very different. I'm going to give you an example. While Agile is something everybody likes, sees a benefit in, and would agree that it would be a very good thing to exercise, companies are very slow to embrace it. I don't see a lot of it happening and moving and those pods of knowledge and ingenuity being built. That kind of a culture, millennials especially, those, you know, from 2000 on, guilty. Love that. I mean, put me on a team, let me get my sleeves rolled up and let's get juicy over.
Get out of the way.
Yes, and just let that ingenuity begin to roll. And yet, you don't see that. What typically you see is, that's not how we do it here. First, let's learn the rules and the guidelines and the tools and the processes. And then, over time, as you earn the right through contribution, we'll begin to look at you for other opportunities. And I think sometimes with, again, whether it's working on a speech for a seminar, whether it's building your own business, whether it's being in an established job. Those are concepts that I think we need to take a hold of and leverage better than we are today in the workplace. I don't know about your places of work, but where I've been, it's slow to come.
So my understanding is part of the contrast here between the old and the new is that in the past, people were working more in silos. So the marketing people were in one part of the building, the engineering people in another part, quality assurance was far down the hall, and so on. And we communicated by passing a big, thick book that we had produced over the cubicle wall to the next person. Talk about how the relationship among these different people and roles in the team is changing, and how that reflects not only a change in function, but a change in attitude and expectations that we want our employees to bring to the workplace.
Absolutely. One of the key principles that was espoused by the original Agile Manifesto was this notion of a cross-functional team, that you want the team to be able to solve the problem entirely within itself. You don't want to have to go talk to the marketing people. You don't want to have to go talk to the accountants, or all of the people needed to solve a particular problem should be the people working on that problem, not just like metaphorically, I mean, this isn't an abstract, John's on the team and he's over in marketing across the building. Like, no, we want to sit next to John. We want to sit with John to work through this particular problem. In my own experience, I've seen that work very well. Prior to my work at NewBoCo, I managed the e-commerce department at J&P Cycles. This wasn't an IT department. It wasn't a marketing department. It was an e-commerce department that had marketing components, sending emails. It had technical components, talking to the warehouse systems and our ERP systems. It had product people. We had an e-commerce specialist in the motorcycle industry on the team. So when we wanted to, what products should we promote or that sort of stuff, we weren't talking to the merchandising department. We were talking to the person in our team that represented the product. And we were able to do a lot of excellent work very rapidly because we didn't have to wait for marketing sign-off on the search engine optimization characteristics of our plan. We just made a plan within ourselves and executed on it because we didn't have to ask anyone's permission because we had all the experts in the company right here. The rest of the company wasn't structured, wasn't built around kind of these cross-functional teams. So we had the traditional marketing and merchandising and all that sorts of stuff. And it turns out that as a cross-functional team, we were able to kind of expand our influence because we would just draw the right marketing people into the conversations, the merchandising people. And pretty soon, everything started evolving out of the work that we were doing because we were just moving so much more quickly than all of the departments that had to work with each other.
And you're working in real time.
Yes.
With the assumption at the beginning, it sounds like, at least I hope, that you're also given the resources and the accountability and authority that you need for the working pod. Mm-hmm. So it's fully contained within the working pod, and a synergistic, innovative think sort of begins to take place, which I think drives what the output of that team is capable of doing at a much higher ratio than had they not.
And what was interesting is that, J&P Cycles had been around for 30 years at the time that I joined the company. It was a catalog company. When I joined, 30% of the revenue was from the web. 4 years later, 65-70% of the revenue was from the web, all in a very short period of time. Mm-hmm. And that influence was largely due to just owning our problem space. Mm-hmm. It was an accident that we started with a cross-functional team owning e-commerce. It was an e-commerce department because nobody in the company cared. We just had a couple people who had the job of doing e-commerce, and then everyone else was focused on the catalog, focused on shipping and warehousing. And eventually that happy accident turned into building a lot of really capable software that's still in production today.
So my next question is for any of you here. We have at Cornell College an alumnus who's been very generous to the college. I've got to know him because he's helped programs in which I work. And he told me that at the very start of his career, he went to work for a very successful man, and he was the kind of gopher for this fellow at the beginning, I think. And there was some mishap with the presentation equipment, the slide projector or something. And so my friend said to his boss, well, thank goodness I'm not in sales. It's a technical problem. I'm not in sales. and his boss said, "You work for me, everybody is in sales." So I want to hear a little bit about how Agile puts the focus on the customer, on the client, and how that engages every member of the team. Greg was looking for an opportunity to step in if you want to speak us.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Certainly, from my perspective, as I build products, it does our organization and certainly my customers no good at all to build a product that they don't need or doesn't fully satisfy their problem space, right? Likewise, for Keith talking about e-commerce, you put up flowers to sell on the motorcycle site, there's probably not going to be a very good deal, right? The right product for the right customer at the right time. Agile is very much about addressing that. And part of that is that iterative cycle that we talked about earlier, and making sure that we're reviewing early on, frequently, and letting the customer give that feedback so that by the time we get to the end, we have the right product, not a product that's way too slow or a product that doesn't fulfill the requirements, and we don't know until the end. It really is about getting the right product to the right person at the right time.
I love that it's customer-centric.
It is.
It's the only way, I think, that in business today, that's a differentiator, right? If we aren't meeting our customer or clients' expectations, if we aren't helping them accomplish what it is they are trying to do, it's certainly not going to be a long-term relationship between the two. When it comes to concepts of agile, and you think about, I'm going to twist it a little bit and put it in a human dimension, because I think that in the human aspect of agile, we also need to put down the egos. It takes a lot in a pod of people working together to say, we've tried that before and it didn't work, to a younger person who may not know better. They're just fresh ideas right out of college. Well, fresh ideas right out of college are probably already beginning to be antiquated and not as relevant. What I knew 10 years ago is no longer relevant to what will happen 10 years from today. Millennials, when they come into the marketplace now, have brand new ideas on old concepts we've all played on old foundations we've all used. So it may be an old idea that I've tried before, but not with the way that they see it. They're tech savvy, their ability to think forward. They like a crisp challenge, a juicy way to look at something. And when you are working with people, what I've learned from the agile methodology is that if it worked in software, it works in hardware as well. But you have to go through the same sort of metamorphosis. In order to be fluent in an agile language in software, I have to be able to change the way I see how I work with my team of people, whether it's a stakeholder, a customer, a peer of mine that I'm working with. So Agile has a lot to offer, more than just a software organization. We've learned a lot from our engineers. I think that we forgot how to put it into the human dimension.
Well, and you mentioned the young person comes and says, hey, I have this idea. Just saying we've done that before isn't a very satisfying answer. We've tried that before and it didn't work. All right, tell me more.
Yeah.
What did you try? Why didn't it work? What aspect, did part of it work, but you weren't, did we increase traffic but didn't close enough sales? Did we not increase traffic but our conversion rate went up?
Yep.
Those are the real questions that you want to get to, because it may turn out that it was a great idea. The execution was just 90% of the way there. And so kind of a key, especially, Greg talks about, software being delivered on a scale of, the original Agile Manifesto, they were trying to talk their managers into delivering software every 3 months instead of every 3 years. Nowadays, you talk to Greg and say, all right, every 3 months, and he'll say, wow, that's slow. Greg says 2 weeks, and I'm like, we can do better than that. You look at a Facebook or a Twitter, they're releasing code multiple times a day. While we've been on this stage, there have been multiple releases to Facebook in all probability, because you can just get that software right in front of the customers, and you can start looking and seeing, is this solving the need? Did we make this better or worse? And so by taking that kind of rapid experimentation, you just layer it into the way that you build things to try and get, what's the smallest amount of code we can write, the smallest amount of whatever implementation we can do to answer the next question, to make our next decision about what do we need to do.
Well, I think that the point you make and the example you provided with Facebook helps to illustrate how Agile applies to things, software development certainly, and certainly outside of software development of many different natures, right? The speed of delivery of Facebook, and in a live environment we're able to update people's live experience, such as Facebook, Google, and so many others do, compared to the environment I'm in, where I'm delivering software a few times a year to my end customer, and internally I'm building larger feature sets and delivering it on a little bit slower pace to my testing team, because the testing is rigorous and in depth. So it really shows the breadth of application of Agile.
So I teach computer science, and I introduce my students to professional ethics through a code of professional ethics that our professional societies have published. And the point I try to make is that professional ethics is more than just avoiding lying, cheating, and stealing. That's kind of the obvious part. And there's another part about continuing our own education, helping our junior colleagues advance, thinking in terms of not only our client's immediate need, but our client's best interest overall, and so on. And we welcome you to our panel, because all of you are engaged in doing these things in our community, running your conferences, helping entrepreneurs launch, guiding people, and especially young people, develop into their careers. We only have a minute or two, so in your concluding remarks, could you speak something to the professional ethics that are the key to the success of these better response to clients' needs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me it just comes down to building the right thing. It is helping folks. I mean, I'm spending your money, so how can I make sure that the money that you're spending on the software that I'm building is the right thing to solve the problem that you faced? And it may not even be software, and that's okay.
Somebody talk about continuous improvement means continuous improvement of the people too.
Yep, it does. It sure does. I think that we all need to remember that diversity matters. The millennials, 1 out of every 3 adults in the next 3 years will be a millennial age. They have the greatest capacity to touch and influence all of our clients and our customers in the future. We need to hear from them, learn from them, and engage them.
Greg?
Another key aspect of Agile is how it addresses the life of the people participating in the project. And Agile says to work at a pace that is sustainable, right? I personally have been on death march projects at very unsustainable paces, and that's no way to approach it. The new generation, as you keep talking about, the millennials, won't tolerate that very well.
That's right, they'll leave.
They do what I should have done, and that is step away. So it is very important as we address the needs of our own staff that we work in an ethical manner and use current techniques that promote a life balance.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today on Ethical Perspectives on the News. I have been very pleased since coming to Iowa to meet many people like Keith and Annie and Greg who are engaged in the community and supportive of their professional peers, and it makes working here in Iowa a great pleasure and a lot of satisfaction. Thank you, and goodbye.